turned up right. Today, help me out with today's date is April, I believe it's the 23rd. Yeah, we'll hope. We'll say it's the 23rd. It's 1997 in case you listen to this a few years later. And your name is, it's Anna Francis Willis. Right? Annie. I'm sorry, excuse me. Annie Francis Willis. And could you tell me your address?
Yes, it's Beaufort, North Carolina.
Oh, it's Beaufort here. Oh, goodness. What's the zip code in Beaufort?
28516.
Okay, great. Thanks. Now, I spoke with you a while back, and we talked about a lot of things, but one thing, if you could tell me a little bit about singing, what you remember about singing when you were growing up, because I know you did eventually sing with your sister, but do you remember much singing going on when you were young?
Yes, the young people would walk back and forth to church, and we didn't have cars, very few cars, and so we didn't have a car in our family, and we just walked back and forth to church. A lot of times we walked home from school, and a lot of times we just sang on the way. And most of the time we sang hymns, and then we sang some old love songs, and songs like Old Chef, and some of the real old love songs that our mama had taught us. I can't remember the names of them now. But mostly we sang hymns. There would be different girls at different times, you know. Most of the time I was with girls that were not in my family, cousins and close neighbors. And we would sing parts and get up trios or whatever was along and just sing whatever part anybody could do until we would make trios and things like that. And then when we went to school, they used to have a lot. They called them operettas, and we sang a lot in programs like that. I can remember myself as a little girl. I sang songs at different times in school all by myself.
Oh, really?
One time I sang in a Halloween carnival that we had at school, and I remember singing a song about the boogeyman. And my children left for me to sing that now. Say, Granny, sing us that old song about the boogeyman. And then at one time I can remember being in a program with one of the boys in my class. We must have been about 10, maybe 9 or 10 years old. He and I sang a song together about Sunbonnet Sally and Overhaul Jen. And we did a duet, you know. And that was mostly what I personally was involved in at that time. I didn't do much singing in the public other than in school.
I see. Oh, that's neat. So you're saying your mother used to sing some?
Oh, yeah. Mama used to play the piano and sing the old songs that were popular in her day.
I see.
And they were quite some. She sang a lot of songs to us about little children that had been abandoned or their parents had gotten killed and things like that.
Orphan.
And then she taught us about Old Shet and those kind of songs. And
what were your parents' names, just so I know?
My daddy's name was Ed. His name actually Edwin, and he was called Ed. And my mama's name was Leela.
Okay. Was that Edwin Rose?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think I've been trying to understand the Rose family a little bit, but I hear their names a lot. Is he related to Telford?
Yes, he was brother.
Okay, Telford's his brother. Edwin. Okay, I see. And because there's so much music through some of those families. It's amazing. That's amazing. What was your mother? What family was she from before she got married?
She was a Lewis.
She was a Lewis. Okay.
She lived to the other end of the island. We lived down to the east. My daddy lived to the eastern end of the island, and Mama lived to the west end of the island and called it Red Hill, where she was raised in. She was a Lewis.
Was your dad did he a waterman, or what did he do for work?
Daddy did a lot of fishing, and then he was a carpenter. In my years that I can remember him going fishing, but most of my growing up years, Daddy was a carpenter. He built boats, and then he built houses, and of course he was a minister. So he did a lot of preaching too, you know.
I see. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was a preacher.
I see.
he pastored a couple churches, but mostly Daddy's preaching was evangelistic, and he would go places that they would call him, and people liked for him to do the Bible studies for them. And he did a lot of Bible studies. In fact, I even have some of them on tape, some of his Bible studies.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that was...
Did he sing also?
No, Daddy didn't sing. It was amazing.
Okay.
He didn't even sing in congregation, hardly. He would just sort of pat his hand along to the music. But he did very little singing now. Sometimes he'd sing around the house when he was getting ready for church Sunday mornings. He'd sing, but he was not really a singer.
Oh, wow. Did he? What church did you all go to when you were growing up?
We went to the old Free Grace Church down the old Ferry Dock Road.
Yeah.
It's a Wesleyan church now.
Okay.
It changed denominations, but at that time it was undenominational, and it was called Free Grace Church.
Oh, okay. Okay. I know a lot of churches have come out of that church. Yeah, I see. Well, I guess you also mentioned that day your sister, Sydney, that she started to sing quite a bit.
Sydney
when you all grown up.
started singing very young. She sang with two of our cousins that were in the same neighborhood together as a trio. And it's kind of interesting because, children not normally sing parts and harmonize,
Right.
But when they were in the first grade, they were singing as a trio parts.
Oh, my goodness.
And the teachers used to take them from, you used to have a lot of chapel and devotional times in the classroom every day before school started. So they were taken to different rooms in the school as early as first grade to sing for the classes.
Who were the other two she sang with?
She sang with Lorene and Malvina. They were Roses too.
Well.
And then later on, as they grew up, their daddy, which was my daddy's brother, Cletus, he was very interested in music. He played guitar and sang. And he used to take them, and they entered a lot of contests, like 4-H and stuff like that. And they won a lot of ribbons. They really did. They bring home first place a lot of, because they were so young.
Yeah.
And as they grew up as teenagers, then he would take them to television shows, and they would sing on TV. And there was Smiley O'Brien, had a country music program.
No kidding.
And they would go to that a lot of times and sing. And then he started, after they grew up to be 16 and things like that, Cletus would take them around to different schools, and they would put on programs himself, singing programs. And they sang. So she really sang just about all her life.
I'll tell you, that is so interesting.
Yeah, she did.
I think I've heard people refer to them, but I wasn't
Yeah, they
quite
called
sure
themselves the Rose Sisters.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
And they then, after she got married, they broke up as a trio.
Oh boy, that's a lot of years,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And then she went out on her own, and she had her own band, and she was writing songs by that time. Not hymns, they were songs in the western feel, like, country western.
Country western, yeah.
And she went to Nashville and auditioned for them in Nashville, and they really liked her style, and they liked her songs that she had written. And she came back home, and they asked her to record some of them and send them back to them. So she did, and then it wasn't long after that she got a contract through the mail to sign, and she was really going to go into hit it big, I suppose. That was her plans. Her husband was very interested in that. But
someone's coming in. Let me just shut that off. So you were talking about Sydney, and she had that contract in the mail and all that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, at this time in her life is the time that we got converted. We got saved on a Sunday morning, both of us at the very same time. At that time, Sydney had her own band, and she was playing in a country western. They had this big building, they had barn that they had rented, and they were meeting there on Saturday nights and putting on programs. And she had her own band, and she was doing good as far as the world was concerned, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But we got saved, and of course, that was the end of her career. So she never signed her contract, never sent it back. She ran across it not very long ago. She was moving, and she found that contract in the drawer. So it was never, she never sent it off. So we don't know where she would have gone or what she would have done. But anyway, then she started singing for the Lord.
I see.
And to this day, it's been 30 years now, this past November. So for 30 years, she has given all her talent to the Lord. We made 3 albums, and all of the money that was made from those albums was given to our church. And so she's just been interested in using her talent for the Lord.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Going back, just I have one question about when she sang with the other 2 girls, the Lorena and whoever. What sort of music did they sing? The 3 of them. What sort of?
They sang mostly the songs that were popular in that day, like Four Walls, and I guess you would call it country music, you know.
Yeah.
And those kinds of songs that was popular in that. I can't remember another one right now, but one of their songs that was very popular, I mentioned before that Mama taught it to us by Old Shep.
Old Shep.
Yeah, now that was one of their really, they could do that real pretty.
Oh, that's a sad
And
song.
they had a lot of requests for that. And they did a wonderful job. Their voices blended real well.
I tell you. Were the other 2 girls, were they Cletus Rose's daughters?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see. But you've really helped me put a puzzle together in my head about, because I'd heard little bits and pieces and not figured it out till now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's wonderful that you all were saved at the
Same time on Sunday morning.
And
You know, we were in our revival. In fact, it was the first revival that was ever held in our, what turned out to be our church, you know.
Oh, really?
I had told you that Brother Parker came and pioneered the work there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his first revival.
Oh,
And we got saved in that revival along with 2 or 3 others. And that was really the beginning of our church, you know.
Tell me about that then, how the Lighthouse Chapel and how Brother Parker came to the island and all that, because I know you had...
Well, at this time, my daddy had been attending the Free Grace Church.
Right.
And he had a desire to start something on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say too much, you know. He was just wasn't completely, totally satisfied there any longer. Mm-hmm. And he was interested in getting something started that would be more on what he believed and more to the old track, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time they were having camp meeting on Harkers Island in the old Harkers Island school building. And this year, Brother Parker, Reverend Dan Parker, was the evangelist for that camp.
Wait, was that camp meeting put on by the Free Grace Church? Or
some of those people were involved too.
I see.
A bunch. Some of the people there were on the board of the camp, and they backed it too, you know. And it was.
So it was different ones that put on the camp.
Right. Yeah. It was they had a board of directors, you know that, and some of those people from Free Grace Church were on the board. Johnny Lewis and Oliver Griffin, and Daddy, and then there were some people from up the state, up in North Carolina, that were on the board too. They had an interest in it, and they would come, and it was a combined kind of thing.
I see.
So this particular year, Reverend Dan Parker was the evangelist for the camp. And during that camp meeting, Daddy felt real strongly to ask him if he would consider coming and helping him start a pioneer work.
Wow.
Well, at this time, Brother Parker had accepted a pastorate at another church and his wife was actually home packing and getting ready to move when he got back. But he told Daddy that he would pray about it while he was there, and he would give him an answer before he left. So he was staying in the parsonage of the Free Grace Church. The pastor there was Reverend Willoughby at that time. And one night in prayer, he said that the Lord came in the room that night, and just so outstanding. And he said that the Lord spoke to him and told him, said, I want you to come to Harkers Island. And it was kind of strange because the next morning, the preacher's wife, Sister Willoughby, she told Brother Parker, she said, I have been in the presence of the Lord all night. She said, I've not been able to sleep. There has been so much God in this parsonage. And he said, Sister, I know what you're talking about. He said, I have been up all night long. And I don't know whether he told her what God had told him to do or what, but anyway, he had his answer. And he told Daddy, he said, Brother Rose, he said, I'm ready to come. He said, God has definitely showed me tonight that this is what he wants me to do. So he went back home and he told his wife that he had this call from God to Harkers Island. And she said, well, whatever you want, I'm willing. So they contacted the other church and told them the situation, and they wanted him to do what the Lord wanted him to do. So they moved. He had 5 children, and he and his wife packed up their belongings and moved. They were in Alabama at that time. In fact, Brother Parker was a native of Alabama, and he had pioneered a church there and had been pastoring there, but he was ready to leave it with some others and was ready to move. So they came to Harkers Island in the year, I think it was 66. They came back, camp was in July, and he went back and told, in other words, they moved to the island in time to enroll his children in the school. So it would have probably been the last of August.
August, yeah.
Possibly when school started. And then November was the first revival. They started the work in one of the rooms of the old schoolhouse.
Oh
they took one of the rooms and painted it up and fixed it. I remember the floor was painted with some dark red paint, and they had got some furniture from somewhere, put up curtains, and started the work in one of the rooms there in the old school building. And that revival in November is the revival that we got saved in. A week before the revival started, one of our cousins, Francis Willis, had gotten converted. And my uncle, Hallis Rose, and his wife, Mary, they had been away from the Lord for quite some time, and they got back to the Lord. Wow. So there was them and Francis, and then there was Johnny and Helen Lewis that were there with them, and their 2 daughters. And then me and Sydney and Rachel Willis got saved in that meeting. And that was actually the start of the church. Wow. You know. So we worshipped in that building for 2 or 3 years, and then we started our church. It was the old basketball court.
Oh my goodness.
Was the foundation of the church.
Oh, isn't that something?
So we started our church, building our church on that slab.
Isn't that something?
And that was where we got started.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Did they have back then? Did they have music? Did you sing in the services?
Well, the first year, I would say, maybe the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Sydney started singing by herself, playing her guitar and singing. Then later on, maybe 6 months, she asked me to start singing with her. And we had our cousin Francis that had gotten saved. So we 3 started singing together as a trio. And we sang together for maybe a year and a half.
Right.
And then one day, Brother Hallis, in the meantime, one of Francis's sisters had gotten saved. And then Rachel played the piano, and we were wanting to use them in singing too. So one day we were in the old school building practicing and trying to make up a trio with some of these others. So we had started using Francis and her sister Vonda and Rachel. We were going to let them work as a trio, and then me and Francis and Sydney as a trio. Therefore, we would have more variety of singing in the church. So this particular day, we were in there practicing, and Brother Hallis had come and joined our church at that time. I had started. He hadn't joined because we didn't have church membership at that time, but he had come and was a part of our church. And this day, he was walking down the hall, and me or Sid went, I don't know which one, but one of us said, wonder if we could sing with Brother Hallis. So we hollered at him and told him, said, Brother Hallis, come up here. We want to see if we could get up a trio with you. So he came up there, and Rachel played a song, and me and him and Sid started singing. And just like that, we hit it off. Our voices blended, and so that was the start of the Lighthouse Chapel Trio.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we've been singing together now probably 28 years.
Wow.
At least
That's
28 years.
Gone. Did what sort of songs? Do you remember what songs you sang early on?
Well, we started using Sydney songs right away. See, Sydney started. Those 3 albums that you listened to, she did practically all those songs. There was one song on our Peace Like a River that was a song we used in camp with the president of our camp, which was Ray Hemrick. And he had at one time pastored the Free Grace Church, but now he wasn't there. But he was the president of the camp, and he liked to sing bass with us, and we started singing Peace Like a River together. So when we made our second album, we decided to put that on there with him, and we were so glad we did, because the next year, year or so later, he got killed.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was a real blessing that we had that song recorded. And then on our third album, there are 2 songs on it that I wrote myself. But other than that, those 3 albums are all songs that Sydney wrote.
My goodness.
So she wrote our songs, and we sang mostly her songs.
Did she start? She must have started writing.
She started writing songs immediately after she got saved. Well, like I told you, she had already been writing the country songs for.
That's right.
But she changed the minute when she got saved. She started writing hymns and Christian songs.
Yeah.
So
they're wonderful songs. You know, I've heard her really like them. She really has
now down
talent.
through the years, we have used a lot of other songs, but mostly we have used songs that she wrote.
Great. How did you write the songs you wrote?
Well, I like to write poems.
Oh, okay.
And I have written a whole lot of poems. Most of my poems have been, I've had a subject to write about. My first poem that I let others hear, I wrote in honor of Brother and Sister Parker's anniversary.
That's great.
And I was so shy about it that I got this lady to read it, and I made her promise not to tell who wrote it. And of course, Sydney got credit for it for a long time because she was the songwriter.
That's
So
right.
that's the way I started writing poems. And then one day I just decided that I would try a song, and I wrote 2. And of course, I was the shyest about it's ever been made. And finally, I got the courage one day to introduce them to Sydney.
Oh, my
And of course,
goodness.
I did just like she did. I made up my tune as I went along.
It just all would come at once.
Yeah. I wrote the first song that I wrote was A Glimpse of Calvary. And I sort of used my own life as the background for the song. And then later on, I wrote The Wind Looked Toward the Sky. I have written 2 or 3 others, but we've never recorded them or anything. But I quit. I focused mostly on poems.
Yeah, I see.
Like we had a family reunion, and they wanted me to write a poem for the family reunion. So that was my subject, and I wrote one for that. And then different people would have anniversaries, and they would say, will you write a poem for our anniversary? And I would ask them, well, you give me what you'd like to say. Like one girl, she was about 13, and she wanted to write a poem for her mama's anniversary. So I said, well, you come and tell me what you would like to say to your mama and daddy in the poem. And so I took notes from her, and then I would go from there and put it in poem form. I wrote poems for my children on Mother's Day once, and then we had school activities, and we had a graduating class, and I wrote one for them. So mine has been mostly poems.
Oh, that's wonderful, though.
But Sydney just wrote songs.
Yeah.
So she's been the songwriter,
Nice,
and
a lot of
she went at it a whole lot more seriously than I did. So.
Wow. Sounds like you had a talent with words, though. That's hard to put down. Did any of your other brothers and sisters sing or play music?
No, it's kind of strange, but they didn't. None of our other brothers and sisters ever. They could sing like the average person, you know, but they never did sing any much.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tell me about now the. Well, let's see. I had a couple questions. One is just about the Lighthouse Chapel. It's Reverend Parker came and has he been pastor the whole time?
No, he came in '66 and started the work. He was with us for 9 years.
I just turned down.
And then he felt like the Lord was calling him someplace else, so he left. Yeah. So he was going, I think, for 14 years. Wow. So we had a lot of different pastors in those 14 years. Yeah. And then he decided that he was wanting to come back. And we called him back again, and he has been here this time. 8 years, I think it is.
Oh.
So 8 and 8, 16. So for 17 years, he has been pastor of the Lighthouse Chapel.
That's great.
And now, at this time, I told you he is going to go in evangelistic work. So he will be leaving as our pastor. Plans to live here, he owns his own home. So he plans to make this his home.
Okay.
So when he is not in revivals, the Lighthouse Chapel will be his church. But he will be there as a layman now, which is going to be quite a change, you know.
Yeah, I see.
So we already have a new pastor that will be moving in June.
Oh, that's
Brother
wonderful.
Parker will be preaching his last message in the Lighthouse Chapel on June the 8th as the pastor.
I see.
And our new pastor will already have been moved in, the parsonage, and he will take up the next Sunday as pastor.
Well, that's
the next
wonderful.
week.
That is wonderful. That's good to have someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's a small. How many members would you say it has? Because I know it's a fairly small.
Yeah. We have 14 members.
Oh, wow.
That are members of the church. We're running now like 30, 32 in the 20s and high 20s, and last Sunday we had 32. So we'll probably, when our new pastor comes, he's going to be bringing 3 children. So we will stay like that right in the 37. There has been a time that we ran in the 70s.
My goodness.
Yeah. See, Brother Parker had 10 children, and then all of our children were there. But a lot of them have married and have moved away, you know.
Yeah.
So.
There's kind of an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
To that sort of thing. Yeah. My goodness. Now, about the Lighthouse Chapel Trio, that you all made albums, or you started to sing around the area, I guess, first before you made albums.
Yeah, we started going to revivals. We were invited to revivals in the people that were associated with the camp, mostly just in North Carolina, Graham and Thomasville and Salisbury area. And in we got our first album, a couple from Graham, North Carolina, stood up in couple from Graham, North Carolina, that attended our camp, were real active in our camp, stood up in camp one day and said that they felt like the Lord was directing them to start a fund for the Lighthouse Trio to make an album. So it was started that day. They took up an offering. And it wasn't very long before we had the money. And so we made our first album from that. So that's the reason that we wanted to give the money to the Lord, because it was the Lord's people that were. And we had a little school going at the church. We had started a little Christian day school, and we were always needing money. So we told them we made 1,000, and they sold for $5 a piece then. And all of that money, we made $5,000 off of that it was given to the church. Well, later on, in a revival in Thomasville, North Carolina, there was a gentleman there. His name was Lang Sechrist. I think it would be good to have that on record. He told us one day, he was sort of, I guess you would say he was kind of a wealthy man. He owned his own furniture business. And he told us, he said, I want to finance another album for you. So he financed that album. We made another 1,000. And they sold for $5. And we gave all that money to the church. A little bit later on, not very much, maybe 2 or 3 years later, he told us he wanted to do it again. So he financed that tape album. So that was the way we had the 3 albums, and we also gave all that money. We made 1,000, and we gave all that money to our church.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So a long period of time went by, and then we decided that we were going to go in evangelistic work after Sydney's husband died. So we were in a camp meeting singing in a camp meeting in South Carolina, when this gentleman came up to us and told us that he felt like the Lord was direct. His name was Gerald Ripke. And he told us that he felt like during that camp that the Lord spoke to him and told him that he wanted him to finance a tape. So at that time we had been wanting to make a tape. And we had decided the church was real well off financially. And they were not needing the money anymore. And of course Sydney was a widow. And Brother Hallis and myself were not the wealthiest people. So we had decided if we could get up the money to make a tape, that we were going to use the money for our own use and to help us in our traveling expenses and things like that. So when this gentleman came to us and told us that, I told him, I said, Brother Ricky, in all fairness, I want you to know what we're doing, and I would not feel like taking your money for us to make a profit off it. So that if you're wanting to do this, we want to pay you back for the tape. So he gave us the money for the tape, and we started paying him back. We paid him a portion of the money, and he finally told us one day he didn't want any more. So, but it's kind of interesting to know that when we went on our first camp, we did not have any equipment at all. So we borrowed the tapes, the church's PA system, and their old microphones. But this same gentleman, Ripke, Brother Ripke, came to us one day and he said, the Lord has told me to buy you some equipment. So he bought us a brand new, we have real good quality equipment. He bought us the PA system, everything that we needed. And Sydney had her own little electric piano that her husband had bought her before he died. Him and his son had bought her too. She had started and learned to play herself because we had needed to be on our own. We had several piano players that had quit us, and we just were left at times standing with nothing but an old guitar. And she said, I am, with the help of the Lord, am going to learn to play the piano. And she did. She plays excellent now. But only thing we had to buy was our mics. We went and bought our own personal mics.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful.
we had all of our equipment to go into evangelism. We felt like that was really the thing that told us the Lord definitely wanted us to do this because He supplied all our needs. We didn't have the money to buy all that stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and it was just given to us. So now we're in it, and we're doing real good. In fact, we've just closed out two meetings, and we have 4 more staring us in the face.
Do you really?
Yeah, so we'll.
So you travel quite a bit.
So we will be
Yeah.
traveling.
Where will you be going?
We're going to Pennsylvania. Our first camp meeting that we have this year is in Pennsylvania. Our next one, scheduled one. Then we'll close that out and we'll be going to Pickens, South Carolina for another camp there. And then we'll be going to, in October, we'll be going back to Pennsylvania for a revival. And we have an outdoor camp meeting scheduled here in North Carolina. So that is the meeting. As of right now, Sydney and her new husband are in Indiana in a revival. She's doing the singing and he's doing the preaching.
Well, I was gonna ask you because I knew she had.
Yeah, Sydney takes meetings on her own, her and her husband.
Yeah.
He gets quite a lot of evangelistic meetings, and she sings. She plays and sings for herself.
And she moved off.
Yeah, she
the
lives.
island.
She's living in Salisbury, North Carolina. That's where her new husband. It's interesting. I think might be interesting to you to know that this gentleman that Sydney is married to, we sang in his church about 25 years ago, at least 3 times in revivals. And we were real close friends with his wife and his family. And then he had called us to his camp in Indiana to be the singers a year before last. And in the meantime, his wife had died. And in one of those camp meetings, he and Sydney started this relationship and got married.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that came apart through our singing in camps meetings, you know. Now, that put an end to the Lighthouse Chapel Trio in the church, but we're still singing together, she and I and Brother Hallis, in these meetings and things.
Who sings in your church now?
Brother Hallis mostly sings by himself. And sometimes he sings with some of the young men in the church. They sing, it's kind of, it's not worked out real well because none of these men sing parts.
I see.
They all sing lead,
They all
and
sing
so
lead.
Brother Hallis has to put the alto to it, and so it's never developed into a trio or anything like that.
I see.
But he likes to
He
use them.
leads.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about parts because I just had another question. Was you mentioned way back that when you were young and you all were singing, you would find parts and sing them.
Yeah.
I said, how did you know how to do that?
I don't know, honey, other than just, it was just something that was in us, I suppose, you know.
That's fascinating to me.
To be honest with you, right now, if you ask me what part I sing, I couldn't tell you the proper word for it. I know that Sydney sings the lead part.
Right.
And me and Brother Hallis do the alto parts, and whatever comes naturally to us. We do a lot of twisting around. We do a lot of switching around. Sometimes I do the lead and Sydney will sing the part, and sometimes Brother Hallis will do the lead and she and I do the parts, you know, the harmony parts. So I don't know what you call them. We're just, we're just do it on our own. In other words, we've never had any training whatsoever. No training. We do not know notes. Sydney does not know how to read notes. She can look at the songs in the songbook and recognize what key is played in.
Yeah.
You know, but as far as knowing music, none of us know music. We just played all by ear.
Well, it seems like there's just been so much singing on Harkers Island, and the people from the island.
Yeah, they all do it just about the same way as we do, don't they?
From what I can tell, there's a real talent and tradition that goes on there. I think it's really neat. But I know there was one more thing I was going to ask you. he wants your child. Oh, I know. Do you have any? Is there a song or a few songs that are like your personal favorites that mean a lot to you? I mean, it could be from what you sing or what church songs.
Well, I would say that the one that means the most to me is one that we recorded on our tape that Sydney wrote. And I guess the reason why it has really been amazing to me that I went so long without serving the Lord. I was 28. I was raised in a Christian home by real godly parents and raised in a good church. And I deliberately went my own way, knowing that I was rejecting the Lord. So when I finally came to the end of myself and realized that I was never going to be happy without serving the Lord, I just could not grasp the fact that He would forgive me when I had deliberately rejected Him for so many years. So Sydney wrote a song, I Forgive You. And I would say that that is the song that means the most to me, because when I did come to Him, bringing all my sin and all my shame and everything, He was so willing. And I guess that I would say when she wrote those words, my child, I forgive you, that struck the chord in my heart above all the songs. And it's just amazing that He would have that much love, that He would forgive me in spite of all those many years that I had deliberately. I mean, I know a lot of people get saved later in life, but when you've known from a child and just deliberately going your own way and just trifle with the mercies of God, and then find yourself one day begging for mercy, and He so willingly reached down and forgave me and took me in, it's just amazing to me. I reckon I'll ever be able to comprehend the love of God from that standpoint, of knowing that I just deliberately went my own way, and knowing what I should do, and knowing that I was trifling with His mercy, and knowing that He loved me. I couldn't comprehend it when the time came that He was just so willing to forgive me. So I would say that that song, I Forgive You, is the most meaningful of all the songs that we sing.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for telling me that. That's wonderful. I remember hearing that song, too.
Yeah, it's on that tape.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else I've forgotten to ask about? I
don't
covered a lot of
I don't know of anything else, honey. It seems like you've covered everything.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, it's been a privilege, and I hope that it'll be a blessing to somebody.
Yes, it will.